Good morning, Joyce.
Amen.
So we're here for a third time to talk about trust, and we had ended the last session where I'd asked you if we could continue what we were talking about with the idea of slowly. But then someone wrote to us on Instagram, and his comment was so much more interesting than slowly. I thought I'd share it with you and we could talk about it. So he wrote, honesty is such a fascinating topic, but lying is such a poison that we struggle with. Our masks seem to be the I we know, and the empty hole we find once alone without them is all at once beautiful, holy, and terrifying. I'm constantly floored by how I didn't even know that adoption was the issue that would bring freedom to examine myself. I didn't even know I was running from myself. When you hear that, what comes to your mind?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is back in the day when I was doing a lot of therapy with adolescents and when I was running a clinic, um, people would, adoptive parents and professionals were very concerned, and rightly so, about teens who were running away. And I reframed it and said, they're not running away, they're running toward. And I think that's true also for adoptees who feel like they're leaving something when they're actually aiming for what's real and what's true for them. And they're trying to figure out what that is. And I think it makes a big difference when you describe someone or yourself as running away as opposed to running toward. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. There's lots of other things that come to mind. And I also think it's a great epiphany um, when anyone, but we're talking about adoptees, when adoptees have an aha moment and really begin to think about and reflect on what they're doing and not just take it as this is it.
Mhm.
And most things are not this is it.
Mhm.
You can explore and reframe and reconstruct them in different ways.
Mm. In that comment, this is it. I feel like he was also saying that he was assuming that this was it, that this was who he was. And then maybe his parents died, but he had this realization that there was another self, that this was a mask, and that those adjectives that he used, beautiful, holy, and terrifying, I thought were like, really got the feeling, right? Because you think this is it, and then you to realize that this is actually a mask, and so much of your life was a mask, is it's terrifying, but it's also holy because you're getting closer to the truth. Um, and then when he said that all this time he had found that he was running from himself, how can you live truthfully and run at the same time? Well, I guess that is truth. I guess running is just like you said, it's truthful. Hmm.
I think it's great. I love that you decided to switch us up a little bit today because I really love the idea of people responding to what we're talking about. I think we're having interesting conversations. And
Mhm.
I that when other people join them by asking a question or giving us feedback or, saying their reality, it puts us in a deeper place.
Mhm.
So I don't think isn't talking about slower movement. I think it's just paying attention to what's different. And I think reframing is so important in therapy.
Mhm.
It doesn't take away the truth, but it reforms it, reframes it, uh, and reconnects you to a part of yourself that you're not really paying attention to.
Mhm. Is is that a this feels like kind of a silly question, but is that a common experience for you to have adoptees come into your office shaken to the core, maybe when they've come out of the fog, like when they realize that life is not as it seems.
There are many different situations that bring people to therapy,
Mhm.
and that is one of them. And
Mm,
I think, I think people come and look for help at different points in their life. It's interesting with adoptees because a much higher percentage of adoptees are in therapy as children
mm,
on adoptees. We used to wonder if that was because their adoptive parents had the means or the awareness, or if they were pathologizing the adoptee because of the things that they did or the ways that they were that didn't seem familiar, and that people misunderstood. We didn't, I think most people didn't know exactly why. But I think it's because adoptees are trying to figure things out, and the parents who are raising them have no way of knowing how to do that until they do. And
mm,
many parents have raised children by birth and think we can do that. And
mm,
then they have a child by adoption, and it isn't the same. The
mm,
issues are entirely different, and the way that child presents and what they need is entirely different. So
mm,
anyway, the long story, this is not the brief answer, but the long story is that adoptees become familiar with talking about these things, and then
mm,
they shut it off if they feel like it was imposed. So
mm,
take them longer to get back to getting the kind of resource that they might need, and finding someone who's adoption confident. People can really misjudge you and pathologize you even further if they don't understand what's normal under the circumstances of adoption.
mm. When I think about what this person wrote, and if I were to make it into an animation, I picture a baby being born and then handed to new parents, and this mask slams over the baby, but because of how because in the adoptive parent's vision, a mask has to slam over because the baby's being seen in a different way. And so there this baby is, let's call it almost a suit of armor, right? And we watch this baby child grow up with this suit of armor, but it's all not all, he was born without it, but it's he grows up that way, and the adoptive parents think that's completely normal. But when that person was saying that he found that he was running away from himself, I picture this figure inherently trying to run away from the suit of armor. So they're living their life, but also trying to get rid of it, not just knowing, just feeling discomfort, not even knowing about it. And I would like to talk about that confusion of the parents thinking everything's fine and the person just feeling uncomfortable, like something's wrong, and not knowing it's a mask, but then one day recognizing, oh gosh, this is a mask. The real me is under here. And how devastating that can be, because then it means the adoptive parents didn't ever really see you. And maybe no one ever really did see you. And are you safe without the mask? Are you safe just as yourself?
No, I think that's a good illustration.
Mm,
I see a couple of things slightly differently. One is, when you wear a mask, you're still there.
mm,
And some adoptees are well aware that they're still there and there's a mask at some point in their life or not.
mm,
And I think, it's important not to dissociate that much, that you are you, even when other things or other identities are imposed on you. And I think for some adoptees, it's their parents who all wear the masks, all being birth and
mm,
adopted, and they're who they are. There's a different ways that we as human, no two adoptees are the same. There are similar issues that we need to talk about and think about. But every story is very different. And I think we need to give grace to the differences. and understand that some people come to things sooner than other people do. And some people run away from things when they, in reality, they're running toward. Really finding a way to make sense of all of that and to make it as healing as possible.
Mm,
Of all this is not to say, oh, this is what's right, but
mhm,
what's right for you.
mm. Could you say more about all the parents wearing a mask?
Well, I think we talked about it, or maybe we talked about it not on tape, but we talked about as if. Uh,
Mhm,
the birth parents, first parents are told that this is an as if situation. It's as if you never had this child, just get on with your life. And the adoptive parents are told this is as if you gave birth to this child. This is your child.
mm,
So I think everyone's trying to be something they're not to
mm,
adjust to a trauma. And
mm,
in every single situation, there's some level of trauma. And
mm, mm,
but for the adoptee, it's a little bit different because it's from the beginning. In
mm,
many cases, not all adoptees are adopted at birth.
mm,
So it's, but for many adoptees, the beginning, this is the whole foundation of their story and of their life. So it's a little more powerful in some ways. But yeah, I think there's all different ways people are masked in this story.
mhm. I think it's one reason I love working as a writing coach with adopted people because the fun is to get them to write from underneath the mask and for them then to see what they sound like and also for them to feel heard and reflected because I think so many times as adopted people if we show who we are underneath the mask and we're not met with understanding or appropriate reflection from the parents, the mask comes flying back down. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that the thing with anything, including a mask, is are you in charge of it or is it in charge of you?
Mm,
You choose to bring your mask back down. You have a different amount of agency for yourself than if it comes down. So figuring out, what's going on and how are you perceiving all of this and from where, from what seat are you looking at this picture?
Oh, that might be an interesting project for someone to do, like a collage of their mask or a list of words of their mask, just to help them start to separate. Um, I think today will be a shorter talk, but we are open to, we love hearing from people about what they would like us to talk about. So Joyce, I'm so grateful for this time with you and stay safe in the snow and the ice.
Thanks. We'll talk next week.
Okay, that sounds great. I have to figure out how to end the recording.